Get my computer situated here so I can see what I'm talking about. What are we talking about? We're talking about today we're in the study. Today we're in the study, yes. So the study is here off of the parlor. So last week we went through the parlor. I got yelled at in the comments for painting original woodwork. Big shocker. But today we're moving through those double doors that were at the back of the parlor and into the study. Now the study is technically the primary bedroom. That's what it had been before I bought the house. It's what it still could be, I guess, but I was not going to be using it for a bedroom because I have a king size bed. While you could probably fit the bed in here, it would end up being a room of a bed. Does that make sense? The whole room is your mattress, and you have two side tables, and that's it. And the rooms upstairs are much larger, so I wasn't going to be doing that. The reason it's the primary is because when I bought the house, there were two closets in here and the bathroom, so it's got an ensuite. Looking at the two listing photos of this room is pretty simple. Dated, small, tiny ceiling fan, all 1980s trim, because this room must have been affected a lot by water damage when the fire happened in 1983. And you can still see the marks in the carpet from where the bed had been. From the other angle, you can see the two closed doors are for the closets. The swinging doors, those go into the parlor. And then there is the bathroom, which we're not going to talk about the bathroom today. That is for next week and the following, because that is a two-parter, because it was arguably the largest project in the house so far. But the photos that I took when I bought the house that very first day, you can see in a little bit more detail what was going on in here. Like in this first photo where you can see that the wallpaper was peeling off the walls. I know we had wallpaper in the kitchen that I talked briefly about. It did go throughout most of the house, and in almost every single room, the wallpaper was actively peeling off the walls. The carpet was pretty stained in here. The ceiling fan was very rickety. It's a good framework for a room, but it was just begging for an update. The two closets were the exact same size. They both had a little old-fashioned clicky light. Maybe you could still get them. You probably can still get them. An old-fashioned light that when you open the door, the light turns on. So the closets had electricity in them. They were both pretty rink-a-dink. The doors on them and into the bathroom were all hollow core doors from the 80s. So just cheap doors compared to the original doors that were in the house still. For the design of this room, initially when I moved in, I was going to have this room be a parlor. That wasn't going to be the parlor. That was going to be the dining room. This was going to be the parlor. So it was just going to be 4 chairs, maybe a record player. I wanted to do a wall of built-ins, have like cocktail supplies in here, so all the liquor in fancier decanters and things like that. Neat lighting with the theme being animals in this room. Not in terms of like cheetahs on the wall, but quirky animals. And I'd seen some lights that I thought were pretty cool, like this one of this bull. I've not introduced y'all to, I think you've seen him in the background a couple times, but Diego. Diego is a paper mache rhino bust that I got when I worked in Texas for West Elm. I named him Diego right away. I don't know why. He's moved around from house to house with me. He's been repainted white once already. He was white when I got him. I did nicer white paint on him because he'd been scuffed up a bit. I want to use this example of the animal on the wall holding a light for Diego, and I've got all the supplies for it, so that'll be a video down the line when we convert him into a light fixture. The idea of a parlor faded away pretty quickly because once I had moved into the house and I was working upstairs where I had my office originally, I felt too disconnected from the rest of the house. So I found that I was just down here all the time with my laptop anyway. And by the fall, I knew my friend Andrew was going to be moving in for a while. My office was where the guest bedroom is now, so I was going to be moving it down here. So that's a little backstory on the study. It is continuing to evolve. It's not set, but for now it works. Other thing that I knew was that when we got to this portion of the house, everything was going to be shifting to true green. In the kitchen, it was kind of a bluish teal, but I wanted green in here. I have always wanted a room that was a very rich forest green color. I tried to get away with that at the ranch, and it did not work out because the space was too big and it just kind of muddied the message a bit and ended up looking kind of Northwoods Cabin, which I didn't want. So in here, I was going to use a green that was You might be able to tell the difference right now. This is a blue-based green that I am wearing, and the walls are a yellow-based green. I wanted a yellowy, warm green, and the color that I settled on by Sherwin-Williams was Secret Garden. This room I was going to be color drenching because it was very bright. It's not super bright anymore, but I think that's more of a, I think that's more to do with the fact that I don't have all the lighting in here that I want, and it will get there. But before we could get there at all, we needed to do demo. And in here, demo meant wallpaper removal, carpet removal, and closet removal. So we'll start with the carpet, because that happened before anything else really in the house was the carpet got ripped out. You find things when you're tearing carpet up, you find things that are odd and whatever. And in here, one of the things that we found was that the knob and tube wiring that had once been in the house came out of the floor in weird areas that the carpet had been placed on top of. In this image, it was fine because the wiring was dead. I don't have a picture of it right now. In the doorway here, there are scorch marks on the floor here from the wiring that they covered. So I don't know who was doing what in this house, but they weren't doing it right and they were doing it dangerously. So as we would pull things up and you'd find this wiring, it was very panic inducing. Again, it's a miracle the house didn't burn down completely. This is with the wallpaper down. I will say not long into owning the house, not even a weekend. My plan had originally been to keep the wallpaper up and do everything else until I was ready to start doing wallpaper removal. Partly because I didn't know what condition the walls were going to be in behind it, but also I just wanted something that was marginally nicer to look at than bits of, plaster on sheetrock and stuff. I had my family here one night and my dad and brother-in-law and I were talking in the kitchen, and my mom and sister and my sister's kids were in here. After like an hour, I came in and they had pulled most of the wallpaper down. It was a learning moment for me because I had it in my head. I mentioned the other week that I don't like asking for help on things and I don't like delegating things. The first strips of wallpaper to get torn out in the house, I felt should have been by me. I didn't say anything, I don't like confrontation, and I didn't say anything to them at the time, but I was just like filled with this blind rage of how dare you do something I didn't ask you to do. In hindsight, it was no big deal, and I didn't make a big deal out of it, and I ended up pulling all the wallpaper down anyway, but before I knew it, it was down. It started in here, and it really just fell off the wall. It did leave some glue behind, which you can see bits of it in these images. It came off the wall without any issue. In this photo, I had started demolition of the bathroom as well, so that's what's kind of hanging out in the middle. And this room ended up becoming sort of a catch-all for a while, where we had a circular saw on a stand that existed in here, and we would do all the cutting for the kitchen and other miscellaneous areas of the house in here because it was out of the way and the sawdust wasn't going to be, blowing all throughout the rest of the space. With this process came, I can't help but talk about the bathroom just a tiny bit. This closet that had been behind me was going to be coming out because the bathroom, I wanted more space in it, more space for storage, because I'm not going to use this as a primary bedroom. No one ever is, because that's how that works. But I figured there's still a closet in here, and it is an okay sized closet. And I don't know why you would want your primary bedroom down here solely for the fact that there's a bathroom off of it, where for future owners, this might lend itself better to a guest room. It's just tucked to the side and they can have their own private area. Anyway, I'm gonna have to ask. While everything was going on, before doing the texturing in the room, I needed to seal off the closet. I put up sheetrock, figured it out around the light switch that was here, and in hindsight I wish I'd moved all the electrical to another wall, so this could have been a pocket door next to me, but that's neither here nor there. And then this photo of me looking mischievous and perplexed, that is after spraying the texture on the wall. As a reminder, the reason that I sprayed the texture on the wall anyway, it was because of the wallpaper glue that was left behind, and my lazy ass did not want to remove the glue. I wish I knew this at the time. I didn't find this out until last summer, coincidentally, but Sherwin-Williams, and I'm sure other companies too, but Sherwin-Williams sells a product that you can roll on to your old wallpaper glue, and it seals it and deactivates it, so then you can prime and paint over it. I didn't know that at the time. I can't say I would have done things differently because the walls still would have had weird areas of texture, but by spraying a watered down plaster over everything and doing a knockdown texture that you see here, whatever glue was going to reactivate with moisture, that was kind of sealing it in a way, because then I was going to prime all of that and then paint over it. Apart from the primary bedroom upstairs, which you won't see until the fall, it worked just fine. The great thing about drywall primer is that you can get it from anywhere and it's always going to do the same thing. I ended up, rather than paying a little bit extra for it at Sherwin-Williams, I just got the cheapest kind from Menards or whatever big box store you have convenient to you. I had them tint it to the darkest green that they could, or conversely, you could do a darker gray. And I loaded it in my Wagner sprayer and sprayed the walls down. I had covered the windows just to protect those. The trim was already gone. These hollow core doors, I think I just took them off. But I just sprayed the walls, and then it's not shown in the video here, but I sprayed the ceiling as well. So everything was this kind of Neapolitan green ice cream color for a while, which eventually got on my nerves because I don't know if I've mentioned this. I don't really like creamy colors. I don't know if that makes sense, but creamy in terms of it's a color, but it's like a creamy version of it. So like this was like a mint ice cream color to me, and I didn't like it, but it was just a primer, so it didn't matter. Again, I'm off topic. So last week I went much more in depth about the floor sanding process, so I'll be a little lighter here. When it came time to sand the floors down, I went to my local Ace Hardware and rented a belt sander. I purchased 3 different grits of sandpaper for it. One that was super coarse, one that was like a medium, and then a fine one. And I don't remember the exact numbers for them, but trust me. I started the sanding process in here, and the coarse one was just to rip through the top of the floor. And it did a great job. This floor didn't have any shellac or finish on it any longer, so everything came up super easy, and I thought, well, this is going to be an easy process. They turned out beautiful, and I wasn't doing like the final sand on them because I knew I'd have to rent the sander again, and I needed more sandpaper because I had run out. This was a bit later, maybe a week or 2 later, when I did the final round of sanding. And I think I'd polyurethane these at that point too. I moved a drop cloth in here and started painting the room. Again, the color was Secret Garden by Sherwin-Williams. Got the ceiling all painted first with the edges cut in. I hate painting ceilings, and you can kind of see in this photo, for whatever reason, sometimes with ceilings, I can just see the roller marks in it. And I don't know why, and it might have been something where I hadn't mixed the paint again after I bought it. I just bought it, came home, and poured it, which is a habit that I have stopped since then, because as much as they shake it at the store, you still need to stir it yourself, because some paints, depending on the dye that is in it or depending on the chemical makeup of that paint itself, sometimes they will separate even in that couple hours between the store and getting it home. So I've gotten better about that, but this ceiling still has track marks on it, for lack of a better word. And I used a different paint for the ceiling than I did for the walls. I shouldn't have done that either. I should have just used the same thing all the way through. And if and when this room gets repainted green or a different shade of green or whatever, I won't make that mistake again. So I started pulling the color down to the corners, getting everything cut in, and then the color was on the walls. And you can see right away this is a very stark contrast to what it had been. Very dark, and yeah, I mean, I loved it. I loved the color, but without the baseboards, I could still see that mint green, so it still felt to me there was this weird feeling with all of it. It was one of those like brief glimpses of what this could look like, but it's not there yet. I did love the color though. I was happy with the color, and I've never regretted this color once. Once that was on though, nothing else really happened in this room until I had moved in. And because I was color drenching, I wanted to have, every room in the house has floor to ceiling drapes. I wanted to have drapes in here that were as close to the wall color as possible. So I ordered, I want to say 3 different, excuse me, I have the hiccup. I ordered 3 different colors of green velvet drapes. They all were in the color olive. I didn't know what was going to be what. It was one of those things where you open the box and immediately 2 of them you're like, nope, that's not the right color. But the third one, which is this, was almost identical to Secret Garden, which was the coolest thing. This is another thing in hindsight for people where if you are doing drapes or there's a drape that you love and you want it to match your room entirely, it's probably smarter to get the drape first and love the color and then match it to a color that works rather than paint and then finding a drape, because there are less colors to choose from in drapes than there are in wall colors. I lucked out. This matched perfectly. But This is an example with the drapes up of the pit that this room can turn into. It can become very dark in here. At the time, with the floor as bright as it was, it reflected the light up, and I thought, wow, the ceiling looks like a totally different color because of that light that is refracting or bending or whatever, reflecting, than the walls. But don't worry, Sean, you're gonna put a rug in here that'll darken it up. We'll get to that in a moment, but first, you can see in this photo, there's the original fan that was up. When you would turn that thing on, it was like, it was all over the place. I don't remember if my dad took that for his shop or not, but that one may have broken when it came down, and I think it might have gone by way of restore or the trash. I don't recall. You can see Diego in the background of this though. So that this room was going to be getting a ceiling medallion because like I said before, wherever I could, if there were ceiling lights or fans, I wanted a medallion on the ceiling there just to amp up something that, even if it's not historical or not even historically accurate to the time period that this house was built, it still is something that adds character and detail, and they're super cheap. I bought a medallion and I bought a new ceiling fan and got that installed, and that is this behemoth that I love. This is my favorite fan in the house. Such a stupid thing to say. I think there are 5 different types of fans in the house, and this was my favorite. They all come with remotes and they all sync up with my Amazon devices, so I can control them with my voice. But anyway, this is the fan. And then this photo. So long hair, that's Sophia sitting behind me. That was before this room had become the study, and it had the sofa from the parlor in here because it was going to be the like hangout room. Because in the summertime, I've mentioned before, my air conditioner is super old. The house gets very warm in the summer because the AC doesn't work very well. This room stays cooler than any room in the house, which is not great in the winter when it's your study and you're sitting here freezing with your hand, you know, on the mouse doing your stuff. So the room existed that way with the sofa in here and my reading books, not the vintage books that I decorate with, but like books that I've actually read or plan to read. By the fall, I knew my friend Andrew was going to be moving in, so I was like, okay, you need to bust a move and get your office actually down here. Make this your study so I could start working on the room upstairs. To get this ready for that, and also for the Christmas party that I had coming and all this stuff and biting off more than I could chew, which is a thing, I needed to get all the trim taken care of. I went to Menards, got all of my baseboards, all of my box trim, because this room with all of its 1980s trim, that had all been torn out of the house completely. First floor and second floor. Everything in here needed to replicate what the rest of the house had in terms of what the historical trim looked like. I told you before, I use my kitchen. This is the first proof of it. I use the kitchen island as my workspace. I will cover it with a tarp. It's very high up, so it's easy for me to work on stuff at it. But this is where I started setting up baseboards so I could get them painted before cutting them down and installing them. This is plinth blocks, which the plinth blocks go at the bottom of the door casings. And then something I did not mention before in either the kitchen or the parlor here, the house most likely would have had a quarter round trim detail around the baseboards. In fact, I know it did because when refinishing the floors, you could see the shadow of where it had been. But when they put carpet in, they tore all of that out so the carpet could butt up flat against the baseboards. So I needed to add quarter round back to the entire first floor as well, so that you couldn't, one, so that you couldn't see that shadow, but two, the sanding equipment that I rented, because there was the big belt sander, but then I did rent a smaller one to get closer to the baseboards. It still didn't get close enough to fully erase that shadow. So painted all the quarter round, took these doors off because I was going to start painting them. I know someone's going to have diarrhea about me painting original woodwork. You don't want to follow me anymore, then okay. And then I started painting the rest of the trims. The windows, they had been replaced in the 80s. For the window sill, the trim piece underneath it, and then the vertical going up between the windows, I didn't remove that from any rooms that had this type of thing, which is most of the bedrooms upstairs have this. I just painted it in place because it's close enough that you don't notice that it's an 80s trim. Maybe someday down the line when the windows get replaced or I decide I'm out of projects entirely and want to do something silly, I'll replace them, but they're fine for now. And then this is an example of what the room was looking like during that. It had become a catch-all. It had random wood chairs. It had this like bar cart thing you can kind of see on the left there from IKEA that I didn't know what to do with that thing. It just kept accumulating stuff. So this whole process was going to be about, one, finishing the details, so getting the trim up, but two, getting the crap out and making it a coordinated space. So the trim is starting to go on here. You can see the mint green on the floor still. The quarter round would be covering completely as I look to check that the quarter round's covering it. Okay, here the casings are going on. It's all MDF because it's getting painted, so there's no point in getting fancy wood because you're not gonna see the grain. And you can see also that, what am I wearing? Oh, it's a t-shirt. I thought I didn't have a shirt on. You can see in this picture, the windows have been taken out. Those are the storm windows that you're looking at that are white, because I was starting the process of painting all of the windows in the house, seen here. They are wood windows, so there's no issue in painting them black. But if you have entirely vinyl windows, this is just food for thought. If you have entirely vinyl windows that you want to repaint, you cannot paint them black, because the direct sunlight in the summer, or even winter, I guess, it will warp and distort that vinyl, and it runs the risk of not only losing the seal, but cracking your glass. That can happen. These, there's no worry about that. So if you're concerned, don't be, it's fine. This is with the windows back installed, and I've got the crown on the doors as well. I got a desk from Wayfair. It's fine, it's upstairs now. But I got this giant rug for the room because the old one was too small, and I chose this. In theory, it was fine. I wanted this kind of mood with the room, but the light coming in through the windows no longer reflected onto the ceiling, and it made the room much darker. It looks bright in this picture because of the ceiling light being on, I promise, and it's late afternoon light where the sun sets on that side of the house. I took this at probably the brightest time of day. Something interesting with the doors is that you can see there were two handles on this at one point, not at the same time probably, but that the handles had changed places. Painting's going fine. I was just messing with the screw to see if it was gonna fit to reattach these things, and I got my thumb with it. I've got windows here. That's one of the doors to the study. But when I took it apart, this is what the locking mechanisms look like for it. It's pretty cool. You know, these old vintage things. And something interesting about these is that I don't know if it is from how the house has settled over the years, but the latch mechanisms that lock the one door in place to make it stationary, the floor is now, I'd say, a good 2 inches too far from that. I don't know what the deal was with the doors, if they rebuilt this door frame and set it higher. I don't know any of that. It's just an interesting little detail. Once that was done, the study didn't change. It was my working space. I reconfigured the desk once or twice, brought some other furniture down here that I had that I painted black just to kind of match the mood in here. But largely, it did not change in here. You know, I do spend 40 plus hours a week in here working my normal job, my desk job. And the cats are usually in here with me as well, whether it's on a blanket that's on the floor next to me, or Sophia hiding behind the curtains as seen in this. I've slowly been adding things that will affect the theme. Animals, I got this little crow lamp. I have my owls on the bookcase. It's getting there, but it's not there yet. In the Decorate for Spring video, you guys saw me pull the rug out of this room and put the white one in here. That has brightened it up a lot. I brought my desk from upstairs down here. I swapped the two. It's smaller, but just makes more sense to have it floating in the middle of the room. So it just feels more like a study. It feels like more of a dynamic space for getting work done rather than, you know, having all these things. With that said, I have no idea what phase 2 of this room is going to look like. It's not one I worry about right now. It is what it is for now. Before we get to final looks, I just want to say we are coming up at the end of March on the 1-year anniversary of this channel. And that is going to be the end of season 3. And that episode will be sort of a Q&A for anything you've wanted to know that you've seen in any of the seasons and any of the specials, any random questions that you have for me. Please make sure that you ask them and put them in the comments below. I won't answer them below. I'll acknowledge, but I won't answer because I'll save them for that video. Give me material that you want to know about so I can talk about it. And that's the end of March, so you got some time to add those. And next week, we are going to be diving in on the bathroom here. This was a massive project, so it's going to take 2 videos to tell that story. If you have any questions or comments on anything you saw in the video today, make sure you leave them below. You can also follow me at restoring_Sean on Instagram, so ask your questions there if you'd like, or you can find out more information on my website, restoringsean.com. Until next week, I hope you all have a wonderful whatever day you're watching this, and we'll leave it at that. So enjoy final looks, and I will see you soon.